Hello and welcome to part 4, the final part of the tutorial on rigging procedural eyes using AutoRig Pro. We are in the home stretch. In the last video we learned to create drivers for the procedural eyes, and in this video we'll continue by creating drivers for the geometry node eyelids and then finish by setting up the proper parenting. Now if your procedural eyes do not have geometry node or procedural eyelids, and you're using a mesh deformation for those eyelids, you can just skip straight to the parenting section of this video. Next, let's go on to the eyelids, which is a little easier. Now that we've done this, it's a similar process, but a little simpler because we don't have a goggle to deal with. All right. Now, before we do that, we need to do a little bit of editing on the vertex groups for the eyes. So we're going to I'm going to go ahead and take off the, I guess we can do it with the viewport preview on there. Let's go back to object mode. Click on the left eye. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. And we're going to go to edit mode. Now in edit mode, let's come over here to our data object properties so we can look at our vertex groups. Now I'm going to select this C_I.L vertex group and then select, and you see that it has everything. Well, we don't want everything, we just want just the eyeball, because that'll make a difference later on when we're parenting. So what I'm going to do is remove all of that from this vertex group. Click remove. And I'm just going to click off to the side somewhere. Then I'm going to go to the eyeball, and I'm going to copy the vertices in the eyeball only and to this C_I.L group. So let's click on the eyeball, hit select. Now we see all of those. Highlight the C_I.L and click assign. Now we can click off to the side, and just to test it, let's click select. And now we have just our eyeballs. Now we could have also done it by just selecting everything in the C_L, deleting those, then selecting the lid top, the lid bottom, and then selecting invert, and then assigning it. But this works just as well. So now let's go and do the same thing to the right eye. So we'll click over here to move our editing over to that one. And we have CI.R. We'll select all of those. We will remove. Then click off to the side. Then I'll click on my eyeball, select. So now I've got all my eyeball vertices, minus the, without the eyelids. Click on the C_I.R and click assign. All right. Then back to object mode. And you'll see in the parenting that'll help out later. Now for the eyelid controls, that's these oblong ones here. We'll go back to pose mode. This lower one here, as we showed before, we hit G and move that. It moves the bones but doesn't pull the skin, which is good. We don't want it to pull the skin. So let's first rig, go ahead and rig the bottom one first. So we'll go over to the bone properties. Not the object properties, but the bone properties down here. And we notice that we're locked. We can only move in this Z direction. But I prefer, and you can do it any way you want, but I prefer, since our eyelids are going up and down, I want to move this up and down. So let me unlock everything over here on the right. I'll go ahead and then let's go G, Z, and move that up. If I move that up, we see it's the Y direction that's changing the most. Now there's a little bit of Z changing as well. That's because our eyes have a little bit of an angle to them. Remember that 14 degrees in the beginning? So we're going to get a little play there, but not enough to matter. So it's the the Y axis that's going to matter. So let's go ahead and hit the alternate G to put that back where it was. So I'm going to lock off the X and the Z, and then right click on the Y, copy as new driver. And just like we did before, we'll go from pose mode to object mode, click on the eye Now instead of going to Material tab, this time we're going to go up to the Modifier Properties tab, because this is where our Geometry Node eyelid controls are. And we have our bottom lid open, so let's just right click there and click on Paste Driver. Now let's test it. We'll go back to pose mode, click on the driver, G, and sure enough, it moves it just like we want. But we have to move it a lot to make that move. So tell you what I'm going to do. Let's go back to object mode, select the eye, let's edit this, edit driver, change it from average value to scripted expression, that way we can play with it. And under location, I'm going to say multiply times 10. Now let's see how that works. So if we click on this armature, back to pose mode, G, that works a lot better. Now this probably depends a lot on your model and the scale of your model. So on a different size model, it might be a different value there, or it might work just fine without adding any multiplying factor. But for this one, I like that 10. That seems to work pretty well. Okay, now we do the same thing for the upper eyelid. Click on the upper eyelid controller, C_eyelid top.L, and we will go down to not this properties, but down to the bone, uncheck the Y, lock the Z, right click, copy as new driver, go back to object mode, click on the eye, our modifier properties, and here we have top lid open, right click, and paste the driver. Now this one opens when we lift up, where the other one opened when we lift down or pulled it down. So that means these are moving opposite of each other. So I'm going to edit this one, edit driver, make it to scripted expression, and I'm going to make it a minus location, and then times 10 as well. So that minus location is because our controller moves the opposite way of the bottom one to open the eyelid. And let's see if we were guessed correctly on that. We'll go click on our armature, click on the pose mode, hit G, and sure enough, that works just fine. Now we also, in this particular eye, we have an angle we can use. So let's go back to object mode. And you can see here in the, if I click the eye, our modifier properties, we have a lid angle. So if I move that around, you can see it wiggles there. Give us a little more character expression. So we want to put a driver there as well. And so let's click on our armature, go back to pose mode, and this time I want to use this top eyelid and rotate that one to control it. So let's go back to our bones here, our bone properties, and I'm going to uncheck this rotation because I'm not sure which way yet we need to rotate it. So I'll click on it, and I do want to rotate it off the y-axis, on the global y-axis. So I'll click rotate, press Y, and then I'll do a little bit of moving around, and you can see when I do that, it's the Z value that changes the most. So that's the axis we want to rotate on. I'll hit alternate R to move that back to 0. Going to lock the X and the Y, and then right click on the Z, and then I'll copy as new driver. Then we will go back to object mode, click on our eye, click on our modifier properties wrench, and right click, paste driver. And that should be all we need to do on that one. So let's click on our armature again, go back to pose mode, and let's see what happens when we hit R. And sure enough, now that rotates just fine. Okay. Now let's copy those over to the right eye. Again, we could do all the procedure over again for the right eye, but why make work for ourselves? Let's go back to object mode, click on the left eye, we'll copy that driver, copy driver, click on the right eye, right click, paste driver. Then we need to edit that. And again, click down here and find out where it says top.l. We'll make that top.r because we're dealing with this controller. That's that .l and .r. Back to our left eye. Copy the bottom lid driver. Back over to the right eye. Paste the bottom lid driver. Edit the driver. Go down to our path. Click in there and see that bot.l. We'll change that to a bot.r. Okay. And then back over to the left eye, and we need to copy our angle driver. Copy driver, copy that, click on the right click, paste driver. Okay, now we need to edit that one because it's still following. You see the angle there matches this one, so we're still tracking to this controller, not the right one. So we have to right click, edit driver, click in the path, find the L, make that a .r, and there we go. Okay, and now since this is the right eye, my guess is that we're going to we might have a change in angle possibly here, or it might be correct. Let's find out. So we'll click on our controllers, back to pose mode, click on the lower eyelid, G, and nothing happens. Why is that? Well, that's because we didn't map the proper transforms over here. So we need to go back to the bone. So while we copy the drivers over, we still have it locked on the wrong locks here. So we need to unlock the Y, lock the Z, and go ahead and lock the X and the Y there on the rotation. And then actually for that one it doesn't really matter on the rotation because we're rotating the top one. So we click the upper one, the upper eyelid, and do the same thing. Uncheck the Y, lock the Z, and then we can lock the Y there and use the Z. So now if we hit rotate on that one, we should see some rotation there, and it works just fine. And if we click on G, we can raise that eye. Click on the lower one, G, and now we can lower it. So we copy the drivers, change the .L's to .R's, but we still had to come over and make sure that the right transform directions were available to us. And there you have it. Now we have mapped and all the eyelids and the eyes to the controllers. So what's the last step we need to do? Let's take care of some parenting. Okay? So we'll go to object mode, because what happens, let's go back to pose mode for a moment and show you what happens when I click on that head and we hit rotate Z. Our eyes are just kind of going a little crazy. One, they're not following the head. Okay? So we need to parent them correctly to the head. So we'll go back to what I want to do is just select just this upper head ring. It's called the C_head.x. We'll go back to object mode. I want to click on the left eye, and I'm going to hit alternate P, and just to be sure I'm going to clear all the other parenting. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing with the right eye. Alternate P, clear the parenting. Okay? Then I'm going to select the left eye, shift select the armature, then control P. I'm going to go down to bone relative and click there. Then I'm going to click on the right eye, shift click the armature, control P to parent, and also again select bone relative. Okay, so let's select the armature, go back to pose mode. We're still selected on our head control. Let's go rotate Z. And now you see that it follows, oops, just fine. If not a little bit exaggerating. Let's click on this neck bone here, rotate that so it follows perfectly. And there we have it, the complete rigging. With Auto Rig Pro, we have our procedural eyes mapped to the eye targets and then the goggle, and we have our eyelids mapped to the eyelid controllers. And there you go. So let me know if you liked the video. You make any comments below, and have a great day.